The massive warship hung in space like a dark promise of violence. The Crimson Fang was the largest vessel in the Vakthor fleet, and everyone who saw it understood one thing immediately. The Vakthor Empire did not believe in peaceful solutions. They believed in strength. They believed in power. And right now, Supreme Alpha Taijin believed his world was ending. His heir was missing. Taijin stood in the command center of his ship, his massive form towering over the crew members who scrambled around him. His scales were the color of midnight, smooth and gleaming under the harsh lights. His amber eyes, usually calm and calculating, now burned with barely controlled rage. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to strike at whoever had taken his child. "Report," he growled, his voice like grinding stones. Captain Han Wul approached quickly. The security chief was smaller than Taijin, but still impressive, with dark gray scales and sharp, intelligent eyes. He carried a data tablet and his expression was grim. "Supreme Alpha, we have searched the royal quarters 3 times. There is no sign of forced entry. No signs of struggle. The heir simply vanished." "That is impossible." Taijin's claws scraped against the metal railing he gripped. "Kira is a juvenile. My child cannot simply disappear from a secured room on a secured ship." "I agree, Supreme Alpha, but the evidence shows exactly that." Diplomatic Officer Jiwon stepped forward. She was elegant where the males were brutal, her silver scales catching the light in soft waves. Her voice was measured and calm, the voice of someone trained to handle crisis situations. "Supreme Alpha, we must consider all possibilities. The station is hosting delegates from 15 different species. Any one of them could see advantage in taking your heir." Taijin's growl deepened. "Then we lock down the station. No one leaves, no one. If they have taken Kira, they will return my child, or I will tear this station apart piece by piece." "That could start a war," Jiwon said carefully. "I do not care." Taijin turned to face her fully, and even Jiwon took a small step back from the fury in his eyes. "That is my child, my heir, the future of our people. I will burn entire worlds to ash if that is what it takes to bring Kira home safely." Han Wul tapped commands into his tablet. "Sending lockdown order now. Station administrator will comply or face immediate military action." Within minutes, alarms began to sound throughout Nexus Point Station. The neutral trading hub, usually buzzing with activity from dozens of species, suddenly went silent. Blast doors sealed, docking clamps engaged. No ship could leave. No one could escape. Taijin paced the command center like a caged predator. His mind raced through possibilities. Who would dare? The Krill? They had been enemies for generations. The Septarians? They were cowards, but clever cowards. Or perhaps the Hive Collective, those insect creatures who thought in ways no one else could understand. "Pull all security footage from the royal quarters," he ordered. "Every second from the last 6 hours. I want to see everything." The crew worked quickly. No one wanted to be slow when the Supreme Alpha was in this mood. They had all seen what happened to those who disappointed him. The Vakthor did not tolerate weakness or failure. The footage appeared on the main screen. Taijin watched intently as the hours rolled backward. There was Kira in the royal quarters playing with learning tablets. There was the heir wandering around the large room, occasionally looking out the viewport at the station beyond. Everything seemed normal. Then Taijin saw it. His breath caught. "Stop, go back, there." The footage froze. It showed Kira standing near the door of the royal quarters. The heir looked around carefully, then reached up and touched the door panel. It opened, just like that. No alarms, no security response. "How?" Taijin demanded. Han Wul's expression was troubled. "The heir must have watched us enter the access code. Juveniles are not supposed to have that level of observation and memory, but Kira clearly does." "My child is intelligent," Taijin said, a hint of pride breaking through his anger. Then the anger returned. "What happened to the guards?" "They were in rotation change. There was a gap of approximately 90 seconds where no one was directly outside the door." 90 seconds. Taijin's voice was deadly quiet. "Someone will answer for this failure." "Yes, Supreme Alpha," the footage continued. Kira slipped out of the royal quarters and moved down the corridor with surprising stealth. The juvenile stayed close to walls, moved quickly but quietly, and somehow avoided every patrol and every camera. It was almost as if Kira had planned this. "My child ran away," Taijin said slowly, the realization hitting him. This was not a kidnapping. Kira chose to leave. Ji-won spoke softly. Supreme Alpha, your heir has been under enormous pressure. The diplomatic meetings, the constant training, the expectations of being your successor. Perhaps the juvenile needed space. Tae-jin turned on her with a snarl. My heir has duties, responsibilities. The luxury of running away is not something the future leader of the Vakthor can afford. With respect, Supreme Alpha, Kira is still a child. Before Tae-jin could respond, an alert came through. One of the security teams reported a sighting. Supreme Alpha, maintenance worker on level 47, reports seeing a small-scaled creature near the commercial sectors. The description matches your heir. Level 47, Hanwol said, checking his data. That is the lower merchant decks. Multiple species have businesses there. It will be difficult to search quietly. I do not care about quiet, Tae-jin said. I want results. Send every available team. Search every room, every ship, every cargo container. Find my child. There is something else, Supreme Alpha, the communications officer said hesitantly. The sighting was specifically near the human sector. Tae-jin paused. Humans. The Vakthor had little interaction with humans. They were a young species, relatively new to the galactic community. They were small, weak, and had no natural weapons or armor. The Vakthor considered them barely worth noticing. They were merchants and traders, not warriors. Why would Kira go near humans? Tae-jin wondered aloud. Perhaps because they seem non-threatening, Ji-won suggested. A frightened juvenile might seek out those who appear least dangerous. Or perhaps the humans took advantage of a vulnerable child, Hanwol said darkly. Tae-jin's decision was immediate. Send teams to the human sector.
Search every vessel.
Question every human. If they have my child, if they have touched my heir, they will learn what it means to anger the Vakthor Empire. As security teams mobilized and moved toward the commercial decks, Tae-jin stood before the viewport staring out at the station. Somewhere in that massive structure was his child, his precious Kira. And he would tear apart anyone who stood between them. He did not know yet that Kira was safe. He did not know yet that his child had found something the Vakthor had never given their juveniles. Simple, uncomplicated kindness. And he definitely did not know that the human who would change everything was currently loading cargo, completely unaware of the storm about to break over his head. Corporal Junho wiped sweat from his forehead and hefted another cargo container onto the loading platform. His arms ached, his back complained, and his eyes felt like someone had poured sand into them. 3 days of non-stop loading and unloading would do that to a person. But the pay was good, and Junho had learned long ago that complaining never made the work go faster. His ship, the Morning Star, was small and old, but reliable. It was a typical human freighter, nothing fancy, just a sturdy vessel that could haul cargo from one side of the galaxy to the other without falling apart. Junho had owned it for 5 years now, ever since he left the military, and he knew every creak and rattle it made. That is the last container, his AI companion announced. Nabi's holographic form flickered into existence beside him, showing a glowing blue figure with crossed arms. You look terrible, by the way. Thank you, Nabi, very helpful. I try. You should sleep before we depart. Your reaction times are currently 30% slower than normal. I will sleep as soon as I check the cargo manifest one more time. Junho pulled out his datapad and started scrolling through the list. Everything seemed in order. Medical supplies for the colony on Vega Prime. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, nothing complicated. Just an honest job with honest pay. His communicator beeped. Junho frowned and checked the incoming message. It was from Station Administrator Yuna, flagged as urgent. Attention, all humans currently docked at Nexus Point. The station is now under full lockdown by order of the Vakthor Empire. Do not attempt to leave. Do not interfere with Vakthor security operations. Remain in your vessels until further notice. This is not a drill. Junho stared at the message for a long moment, then sighed and pocketed his communicator. Are you going to ignore that? Nabi asked. Probably just another political situation. The big species are always having their arguments. Not our problem. The message said it was the Vakthor. They are not known for being patient or forgiving. Then I will stay out of their way. Come on, let me finish this cargo check and then I promise I will sleep. Junho walked into the cargo hold of the Morning Star. The space was filled with neatly stacked containers, all secured with magnetic clamps. Everything looked normal. Hunho moved between the rows, checking seals and making sure nothing had shifted during the last transport. Then he noticed something odd. One of the supply containers near the back was slightly open. Just a crack, but enough to notice. Nabi, did you open container 47?
No, why would I open a container?
Someone did. Junho approached carefully. Pirates sometimes hid contraband in legitimate cargo, trying to smuggle illegal goods past security. If someone had tampered with his shipment, he needed to know. He could not afford to lose his trading license over someone else's crime. He reached the container and pulled the lid fully open. Then he froze. Inside, curled up on top of medical supply boxes, was a creature. It was small, maybe the size of a large dog, covered in silver scales that caught the cargo hold lights. It had a long tail wrapped around its body and small claws tucked under its chin. It was clearly young, clearly exhausted, and clearly very much alive. The creature was sleeping. Nabi, Junho said quietly, "What am I looking at?" The AI's hologram appeared beside him, and her sensors swept over the sleeping creature. There was a long pause. "Oh no," Nabi said. "What is oh no? What is this thing?" "That thing is a Vacthor juvenile. And based on the description in the lockdown alert I just pulled up, that specific Vacthor juvenile is the heir to the Supreme Alpha, the one they are currently tearing the station apart looking for." Junho felt his blood run cold. "You are joking. I do not joke about potential execution scenarios. That is literally the most important missing person in the entire sector, and it is sleeping in your cargo hold. This is not happening." Junho ran his hand through his hair. "This cannot be happening. I am just a cargo hauler. I haul cargo. I do not get involved in political situations with warrior species who can crush my skull with one hand. And yet here we are." Junho looked down at the sleeping creature again. Now that he knew what he was looking at, he could see the details. The juvenile was shivering slightly and the scales looked dull. There were scratches on the small snout, probably from squeezing through tight spaces. The air looked exhausted, hungry, and very small. "It is just a kid," Junho said softly. "It is the child of the most dangerous being currently on this station. Still just a kid." Junho had seen enough scared children during his military days. Human children, alien children, it did not matter. Fear looked the same on every face, every species. And this little one looked scared even in sleep. "What are you going to do?" Nabi asked. "I am going to let it sleep." "That is a terrible plan." "Probably." Junho quietly closed the cargo container lid most of the way, leaving a small gap for air. Then he went to his supply locker and pulled out a thermal blanket and some food rations. He opened the container again, moving slowly and quietly. The juvenile stirred slightly but did not wake. Junho carefully spread the thermal blanket over the small body. The creature immediately pressed into the warmth, making a small contented sound that reminded Junho of a cat purring. Next came the food. Junho was not sure what Vacthor ate, but he had some protein rations that should be safe for most carbon-based life forms. He opened a package and left it near the juvenile's head. The smell of food seemed to wake the air. Silver eyes opened slowly, blinking in confusion. The juvenile looked at Junho, then at the food, then back at Junho. There was wariness in that gaze, but also desperate hunger. "Go ahead," Junho said quietly. "It is okay. You are safe here." The juvenile hesitated for another moment, then grabbed the food and started eating quickly. Too quickly. This kid had been going hungry for a while. "Slow down," Junho said gently. "No one is going to take it from you. There is more if you need it." The juvenile did slow down, watching Junho carefully the whole time. When the food was gone, the small creature looked around the cargo container again, as if seeing it properly for the first time. Then those silver eyes fixed on Junho's heavy work boots. Without warning, the juvenile crawled over to the boots and curled up across them, pressing against the warm leather. Within seconds, the air was asleep again. Junho stared down at the sleeping creature sprawled across his boots. He could not move without waking it. He was trapped. "This is the worst day of my life," he muttered. "It is about to get worse," Nabi said. "Vacthor security teams just entered the commercial sector. They are searching every ship. How long do I have? Maybe 10 minutes. What are you going to do?" Junho looked down at the sleeping juvenile again. He thought about the scared look in those silver eyes. He thought about how hungry the kid had been. He thought about the scratches on that small snout, and the way the air had immediately trusted him enough to sleep. Then he thought about the military teams that would come storming in, weapons ready, voices shouting. He thought about this scared kid waking up surrounded by soldiers. He had seen that before. He knew how badly that could go. "Get me a direct line to Station Administrator Yuna," Junho said. "Are you sure about this?" "No, but I am doing it anyway." Nabi was silent for a moment. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." Junho carefully bent down and adjusted the thermal blanket around the sleeping juvenile. "Connect me to Yuna. We are doing this on my terms. Or we are not doing it at all." As Nabi established the connection, Junho looked at his boots with the Vakthor air sprawled across them and wondered if he had just made the best decision of his life or signed his own death warrant. "Probably both." Station Administrator Yuna answered the call within seconds. Her face appeared on Junho's small screen, and she looked like she had aged 10 years in the last hour. Her hair was messy, her uniform wrinkled, and her eyes were tired. "Corporal Junho, please tell me you have good news, please. I have the missing heir," Junho said simply. Yuna's expression went through several rapid changes. Shock, relief, more shock, then fear. "You have what?" "The Vakthor juvenile. The one everyone is looking for. Found it sleeping in my cargo hold. The kid is safe, unharmed, just tired and hungry. Oh, thank every star in the galaxy." Yuna pressed her hands to her face. Okay, stay exactly where you are. I am contacting the Supreme Alpha right now. Do not move. Do not do anything. Just wait. Actually, I need to make a request." Yuna lowered her hands slowly. "You need to make a request. You, the human cargo hauler who currently has the most politically important juvenile in the sector, need to make a request to the Supreme Alpha of the Vakthor Empire." "Yes." "Are you insane?" "Possibly." Junho glanced down at Kira, still sleeping peacefully across his boots. "But I am not bringing the kid through corridors full of armed soldiers. The air is scared enough already. I want the Supreme Alpha to come here, to my ship, with minimal security. We do this quietly and calmly, or we do not do it at all." Yuna stared at him. "You are definitely insane. He will kill you. Maybe. But I am not traumatizing a scared kid just because everyone else is panicking. Those are my terms. Junho, the Supreme Alpha does not negotiate with anyone, let alone a human cargo hauler. He will simply take his heir and probably execute you for the insult of making demands. Then he can try. But I am not changing my mind." Yuna looked like she wanted to argue more, but she just shook her head. "Your funeral." "I will contact him now." The screen went dark. Junho took a deep breath and looked at Nabi's hologram. "You do realize," the AI said, "that you just threatened one of the most powerful beings in known space." "I did not threaten him. I made a reasonable request." "Semantics. You told him what to do. The Vakthor do not respond well to that. The Vakthor also do not respond well to having their children frightened. I am betting that right now the Supreme Alpha is a father first and a warrior second. That is a big bet." "Yes, it is." Kira stirred slightly in sleep, making a small sound. Junho reached down carefully and adjusted the blanket again. The juvenile pressed closer to his boots, seeking warmth and comfort. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Junho's communicator started receiving messages. Angry messages. Threatening messages. Most were from Vakthor security teams demanding immediate access to his ship. He ignored all of them. Finally, a new call came through. The screen showed Supreme Alpha Taejin himself. The Vakthor leader filled the entire screen. He was massive, intimidating, and currently looked like he wanted to tear something apart with his bare claws. His amber eyes blazed with barely controlled fury. "Human," he growled. "You dare to make demands of me?" "I am not making demands, Supreme Alpha. I am making a request. For your child's sake. You will bring my heir to me immediately." "No." The single word seemed to shock Taejin into silence. "No one said no to the Supreme Alpha. No one." "What did you say?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "I said no. Your heir is sleeping. The kid is exhausted and scared and finally feels safe enough to rest. I am not dragging this child through corridors full of armed soldiers and shouting voices. That will only make things worse. You do not give me orders, human. I am not giving orders. I am telling you how this is going to work if you want your child back safely and calmly. You can come to my ship with a small escort. 2 guards maximum. No weapons visible. No shouting. We do this quietly and we let your heir wake naturally. Or you can storm my ship with your entire security force and terrify the kid you are trying to save. Your choice. Tae-jin's claws scraped against something off-screen. The sound was like metal on metal, harsh and threatening. You are in no position to negotiate. Actually, I am in the perfect position. I have something you want. Your child, and I am trying to do right by that child. Are you? Behind Tae-jin, Junho could see other Vakthor. One of them, a female with silver scales, leaned forward and whispered something. The Supreme Alpha listened, his expression unchanging. You are either very brave or very foolish, Tae-jin said finally. So I have been told. Do we have an agreement or not? There was a long pause. Junho could almost see the war happening inside Tae-jin's mind. The warrior wanted to crush this impudent human. The father wanted his child back safely. Show me my heir, Tae-jin demanded. Prove Kira is unharmed. Junho carefully adjusted his communicator, angling it down toward his feet. The screen showed Kira curled up across his boots, wrapped in a thermal blanket, breathing steadily. The juvenile looked peaceful, safe, completely trusting. Tae-jin's entire expression changed. The fury drained away, replaced by something else. Relief, love, fear, all the emotions of a parent who thought they had lost their child. Kira, he whispered. Safe and sound. Junho said quietly. Just needs rest and maybe a proper meal. I gave the kid some protein rations, but I do not know what Vakthor juveniles normally eat. You fed my heir? Of course. The kid was hungry. Tae-jin stared at the image for a long moment. Then he looked back at Junho and his expression was complicated. Confused, suspicious, but also grateful. Why? He asked. Why what?
Why did you help my heir?
You could have contacted us immediately. You could have used Kira to bargain for money or favors. Why did you simply care for my child? Junho shrugged. Because I found a scared, hungry kid hiding in my cargo hold. Did not matter what species. Kids should not be scared and hungry. So I helped. That is all. That is all, Tae-jin repeated slowly, as if the concept was foreign to him. That is all. The silver-scaled female behind Tae-jin whispered something else. The Supreme Alpha nodded slowly. Very well, human. I accept your terms. I will come to your vessel with 2 guards. But know this. If you have harmed my heir in any way, if this is some kind of trap, there is nowhere in this galaxy you can hide from me. Understood. But you will see. Your kid is fine, just needs its parent. I am coming now. Keep Kira safe until I arrive. That is the plan. The screen went dark. Junho let out a breath he did not know he was holding. I cannot believe that worked, Nabi said. Me neither. Honestly. You do realize you just forced the Supreme Alpha of the Vakthor Empire to negotiate. That might be a historical first. I am less concerned about history and more concerned about making sure this kid gets home safely. Junho looked down at Kira again. Wake up soon, little one. Your parent is coming for you. As if hearing him, Kira's eyes opened slowly. The juvenile looked up at Junho, blinked sleepily, then closed its eyes again and pressed closer to his boots. Great. Junho muttered. Now the kid likes me. This is going to make things complicated. When has anything in your life been simple? Nabi asked. Fair point. Outside the ship, Junho could hear movement. Heavy footsteps. The Supreme Alpha was coming. Soon this would all be over. Junho just hoped he would still be alive when it ended. Kira yawned, showing small, sharp teeth, and made that purring sound again. Junho smiled despite his nervousness. Your dad is coming, kid. Everything is going to be okay. He hoped he was right. The airlock to the Morning Star opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Junho stood in the cargo hold, hands visible and empty at his sides, trying to look as non-threatening as a human possibly could. Which, compared to the Vakthor, was probably not very difficult. Supreme Alpha Tae-jin entered first. He had to duck to fit through the doorway of Junho's small cargo ship. His massive frame filled the space, making the hold suddenly feel cramped. Behind him came 2 guards, Captain Hanwol and Diplomatic Officer Jiwon. They wore no visible weapons, as agreed, but Junho had no doubt they could kill him with their bare hands if needed. Tae-jin's eyes swept the cargo hold, taking in everything in a single glance. Then his gaze locked onto the corner where Kira slept, still curled across Junho's boots. The Supreme Alpha froze. For a long moment, he just stared at his heir. Junho could see emotions warring across that fierce face. Relief, love, anger, confusion. It was the face of every parent who had lost their child and found them again. Kira, Tae-jin breathed. He moved forward, surprisingly quiet for someone so large. Captain Han-wol pulled out a scanning device and swept it over the cargo hold, checking for threats, drugs, or anything suspicious. He frowned at the readings. No chemical traces. No signs of coercion. The juvenile appears healthy, just exhausted. Ji-won moved closer to examine Kira. Her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. She saw the thermal blanket, the empty food package, the way Kira was pressed against Junho's boots. She looked up at the human with an expression of growing understanding. "You cared for the heir," she said softly. "I found a kid who needed help, so I helped." Tae-jin knelt beside his child. His large hand hovered over Kira's small form, as if afraid to touch and discover this was all a dream. Then very gently he stroked the juvenile's head. Kira stirred at the touch and opened those silver eyes. "Sire?" The juvenile's voice was small and sleepy. "I am here, little one. I am here." Kira made a happy chirping sound and tried to stand up but stumbled. Too tired. Too weak from the adventure. Tae-jin caught his air carefully, pulling the juvenile close. His eyes closed for a moment and Junho realized the Supreme Alpha was fighting back tears. "I thought I had lost you," Tae-jin whispered into Kira's scales. "I am sorry, sire. I just needed quiet. Everything was so loud and so much and everyone always watching and I just needed quiet." I know, little one." But even as Tae-jin held his child, Kira kept looking back at Junho. The juvenile reached out with one small hand toward the human. "The kind one," Kira said. "The kind one gave me food and warmth and let me sleep." Tae-jin looked up at Junho, and the human felt pinned by that intense amber gaze. "You are the kind one?" Junho shrugged uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Captain Han-wol said, studying his scanner readings. "No, you did not. Most species would have immediately contacted authorities. Many would have used the heir as a bargaining chip. Some would have simply ignored the situation entirely, not wanting to get involved. But you fed and sheltered an alien juvenile with no thought of reward or recognition. It was the right thing to do." "The right thing," Ji-won repeated. She was watching Junho with fascination now. "Tell me, human, were you afraid? Of the Supreme Alpha? Of the consequences?" "Terrified," Junho admitted. But that did not matter. The kid mattered. Tae-jin stood slowly, still holding Kira. "You keep saying that. The child mattered. But why? Kira is not your species, not your responsibility, not your problem. By all logic, you should have avoided this situation entirely." Junho thought about how to explain. He looked at Kira, safe now in the parents' arms, and tried to put his feelings into words. "When I was in the military, I saw a lot of terrible things. Battlefields, destroyed cities, and kids. Always kids caught in the middle of conflicts they did not understand. Human kids, alien kids did not matter. They were all just scared and lost and looking for someone to help them. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to help a scared kid, I would. Every time. No matter what. Even if it meant your death?" Tae-jin asked. Even then, the cargo hold was silent. Ji-won was looking at Junho like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. Han-wol's expression had shifted from suspicious to thoughtful, and Tae-jin was staring at the human with something like wonder. "I do not understand your species," the Supreme Alpha said finally. "You have no natural weapons, no armor, no great strength. You should be prey, weak and afraid. Yet you stand before me having defied my orders and you show no submission. Only conviction. Is that a problem? I do not know yet." Tae-jin looked down at Kira, who was watching Junho with bright, trusting eyes. "My heir clearly trusts you. That is rare. Kira does not trust easily. The kid knows I mean no harm." "Yes." Tae-jin set Kira down carefully, keeping one hand on the juvenile's back for support. "Show me exactly what happened. From the beginning." Junho walked them through it, finding Kira in the supply container, the realization of who the juvenile was, the decision to provide comfort instead of immediately contacting authorities. He explained his reasoning clearly without apology or embellishment. When he finished, Han-wol was shaking his head in disbelief. "You made every decision based on the juvenile's emotional state. Not on protocol, not on safety, not even on your own survival, just on what would cause the least trauma to a child. That is what any decent person would do." "No," Ji-won said firmly. That is what a human would do. We have been studying your species since first contact. You have this unusual trait. You form bonds across species lines. You protect things that are not your own. You risk yourselves for others without hesitation. The other species call it pack bonding. You adopt anything and everything as part of your family. Is that so strange? To most species? Yes, very strange. Most beings only protect their own kind. But humans? Jiwon gestured at Kira, who had wandered back over to Junho's boots and was sniffing them curiously. Humans see a vulnerable creature and immediately feel protective. It is not rational. It is not logical. But it is powerful. Kira suddenly made a distressed sound. The juvenile looked up at Tae-jin with pleading eyes. What is wrong, little one? The Supreme Alpha asked. Kira pointed at Junho's boots. Want to stay with the kind one? Want the warm boots and the soft voice and the safe feeling. Junho felt his heart break a little. Hey kid, your parent is here now. You are going home. That is good. But I like you. I like you too, but you belong with your family. Kira's eyes filled with tears. Actual tears. Junho had no idea Vakthor could cry, but apparently juveniles could. The small creature looked heartbroken. Tae-jin looked at his crying heir, then at Junho, then back at his heir. His expression went through several complex changes. Finally, he sighed deeply. Kira, the human is right. You must come home with me. I know. The juvenile wiped at the tears with small claws. But can the kind one visit? Please, sire. Can the kind one come to our ship sometimes? I do not think, Tae-jin began. Please. I promise I will not run away again. I promise I will do my lessons and my training and everything. Just please let the kind one visit. Jiwon stepped forward. Supreme Alpha, if I may. This presents an unusual opportunity. The human has demonstrated capabilities that could be valuable. The ability to calm and comfort across species lines. The courage to stand against authority for the right reasons. The instinct to protect the vulnerable. These are traits we could use in our diplomatic efforts. Hanwol nodded slowly. The heir has also clearly formed a bond. Breaking that bond now might cause psychological harm. Tae-jin looked at Junho. Would you be willing to visit my heir? Occasionally? Unyo thought about his cargo routes, his simple life, his desire to avoid galactic politics. Then he looked at Kira's hopeful face. Sure, he heard himself say. I can visit sometimes. Kira made a joyful chirping sound and ran to Junho, wrapping small arms around the human's leg. Junho awkwardly patted the juvenile's head. Thank you, kind one, Kira said happily. You are welcome, kid. Tae-jin watched this interaction with an unreadable expression. You truly are strange creatures, you humans. So we have been told. 3 days passed before Junho actually visited the Crimson Fang. 3 days of finishing his cargo delivery, dealing with station bureaucracy, and wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. But he had promised Kira, and Junho always kept his promises. The Vakthor warship was even more intimidating up close. The docking bay alone was larger than some stations Junho had visited. Everywhere he looked, there were warriors in armor, weapons mounted on walls and displays of strength and power. This was not a diplomatic vessel. This was a ship designed for war. A guard escort met him at the airlock. They were polite but watchful, clearly unsure what to make of a human walking freely through their ship. They led him through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small and vulnerable. It worked. Finally, they reached a large room that looked like a combination of training hall and living quarters. Kira was there, working on some kind of lesson display. The juvenile's back was turned, small form hunched over the holographic screen. You have a visitor. Young heir, one of the guards announced. Kira turned quickly, saw Junho, and immediately abandoned the lesson. The juvenile ran across the room and crashed into Junho's legs with enough force to nearly knock him over. Kind one, you came. I said I would. Junho steadied himself and patted Kira's head. How are you doing, kid? Better. Sire says I can have more free time now. And Jiwon says I am doing well with my breathing exercises for when things get too loud. That is good. I am proud of you. Kira beamed up at him. The juvenile grabbed Junho's hand and started pulling him toward a seating area. Come sit. I want to show you my star charts, and tell you about the treaty negotiations, and ask you about human ships because our database does not have much information. Slow down. Junho laughed. We have time. They sat together and Kira chattered happily about the last few days. The juvenile was more relaxed than during their first meeting. no longer scared or exhausted. But Junho noticed the kid still seemed overwhelmed sometimes, pausing mid-sentence to take deep breaths. "Does it help?" he asked quietly. "The breathing exercises?" "Sometimes. Ji-won says it takes practice." Kira leaned against Junho's side. "I still think about running away sometimes, when everything gets too loud and too much. But I remember you said I should tell someone when I feel like that, so I tell Sire now. He gets worried, but he listens. That is good. Communication is important. Kind one, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are you nice to me?" "I am not your species. I caused big problems for you. But you are still kind. Why?" Yunyo thought about his answer carefully. "Because everyone deserves kindness, Kira, no matter who they are or where they come from. And because I think maybe you do not get enough people just being nice to you without wanting something in return." Kira was quiet for a moment. "The other juveniles are not very kind. They say I am weak because I ran away. They say the air should be stronger." "Hey." Junho gently turned Kira to face him. "Asking for help when you're overwhelmed is not weakness. It is actually one of the hardest, bravest things anyone can do. You ran away because you needed help, and you did not know how to ask for it. That does not make you weak. That makes you someone who is still learning. And that is okay." Tears welled up in Kira's silver eyes again. "You really think that?" "I know that." The juvenile hugged him tightly. Junyo hugged back. This strange alien child who somehow felt like family now. Footsteps approached. Junyo looked up to see Supreme Alpha Taijin entering the room with Ji-won beside him. The massive leader stopped when he saw Kira hugging the human, and his expression softened. "I see my heir is monopolizing your time, Corporal Junho. I do not mind. Kid is good company. May we speak privately? Ji-won will stay with Kira." Junho gently extracted himself from Kira's embrace. "I will be right back, kid. Ji-won, make sure Kira shows you those star charts. The kid has been studying hard." Kira perked up. "Really, you want to see my charts, Ji-won?" "Of course, young heir." Junyo followed Taijin out into the corridor. They walked in silence for a while, the Supreme Alpha's heavy footsteps echoing off the metal walls. Finally, they reached an observation deck. Through the viewport, Junho could see the stars spread out in all directions. "Thank you," Taijin said quietly, "for coming, for keeping your promise. Kira has been asking about you constantly. The kid is special. I'm happy to visit. You have been good for my heir." Taijin stared out at the stars. "Kira is more open now, more willing to communicate feelings instead of hiding them. The juvenile even told me yesterday that being heir is scary sometimes. Before, Kira would never have admitted fear. Being scared is not a bad thing. It means you understand the weight of responsibility. That is what I told my child, using almost your exact words." Taijin looked at Junho. "You are teaching my heir human philosophy without even trying. Is that a problem?" "No, surprisingly no." The Supreme Alpha was quiet for a moment. "I wanted to offer you something. A position as cultural liaison between humans and Vakthor. You would have a place here on this ship with steady pay and quarters. You could help bridge our species. You have already proven you have the skills for it." Junho was stunned. "That is a generous offer. But you are going to refuse. How did you know?" "Because you are like Kira. You need space, freedom. You would suffocate in a military structure even with the best of intentions." Junho smiled. "You understand me pretty well. I am learning. Humans are complicated." Taijin pulled something from his belt. It was a small scale, gleaming black with amber flecks. "This is from my own armor. In Vakthor culture, giving a scale to another means you acknowledge them as family. Not blood family, but chosen family pack. I cannot accept this. It is too much. You can and you will. You protected my heir when you had no reason to. You stood against me when anyone else would have cowered. You have become important to Kira, and what is important to my heir is important to me." Taijin pressed the scale into Junho's hand. "Take it, keep it. Remember that you have allies among the Vakthor now." Junho looked down at the scale in his palm. It was warm, surprisingly light and beautiful. "Thank you. I am honored. There is one more thing." Taijin pulled out a small communication device. "This is a direct link to this ship. If Kira needs you, or if you need us, use it. Distance does not matter. We will come. You trust me that much?" "My heir trusts you. That is enough." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally, Junho spoke. "Can I give you some advice?" Parent to parent? Taejin raised an eyebrow ridge. You are not a parent. No, but I was a kid once. And I remember what it was like to have expectations I could not meet. Junho chose his words carefully. Kira loves you. The kid wants to make you proud. But sometimes the weight of being heir is crushing that child. Maybe it would help if you told Kira that you are proud already, not proud of what the kid will become, but proud of who Kira is right now. Taejin was very still. I tell my heir all the time about duty and responsibility and the importance of our bloodline. But do you say you love Kira just for being Kira? Not the heir. Not the future leader. Just your kid? The Supreme Alpha looked shaken. I thought Kira knew. Kids need to hear it. Trust me. You are wise for someone so young and weak. Junho laughed. Weak is relative. I held my ground against you, did I not? You did. And I'm beginning to understand that human strength lies not in muscle or claw, but in something else. Something we Vakthor have forgotten in our pursuit of power. Taejin placed a massive hand on Junho's shoulder. You have my respect, Corporal Junho, and my friendship if you will have it. I will. Thank you. They returned to find Kira and Jiwon looking at star charts together, the juvenile explaining various systems with surprising knowledge. Kira saw Junho and immediately ran over. Do you have to leave now? I do. I have another cargo run starting tomorrow. When will you visit again? As soon as I can. I promise. Kira hugged him tightly. I will miss you, kind one. I will miss you too, kid. As Junho left the Crimson Fang, he realized his life had changed completely in just a few days. He had made allies of a species most others feared. He had become important to a child from across the stars, and he had a communication beacon that connected him to a warship, capable of crossing the galaxy. His ship, the Morning Star, felt smaller and lonelier when he returned to it, but also more purposeful. He was not just a cargo hauler anymore. He was a bridge between species, a friend to those who needed one. You are smiling, Nabi observed. I am. This is going to complicate your life significantly. Probably. And you are okay with that? Junho looked at the Vakthor scale now attached to his jacket and thought about Kira's happy face. Yes, I am very okay with that. 6 months later, Junho received a message. It was from Taejin. The Supreme Alpha wanted him to attend Kira's coming-of-age ceremony. The juvenile had specifically requested his presence. Junho immediately set course for Vakthor space. As the stars blurred past his viewport, he smiled. He had cargo to deliver, places to be, and a kid to support. Somewhere across the galaxy, a young Vakthor heir was probably sleeping with old work boots nearby, finding comfort in the scent of someone who had shown simple, uncomplicated kindness. And in that moment, the human Vakthor alliance grew stronger, built not on treaties or trade agreements, but on something far more powerful. The universal language of caring for someone who needs you. Some bonds, Junho thought, really did transcend species. Humans had just figured that out before everyone else.